The first Loki trailer was a real shock and awe trailer, and oh boy was it. It was so good, so amazing. And this second trailer is what the biz calls a story trailer, which lets you know exactly what's going on. And you get your log line. Loki, by grabbing the Tesseract, has messed up the timeline, and he must fix it. I'd be like, what about all the other Avengers? And they're like, Captain America went back and fixed everything. You know, I say that in jest, but I believe that might actually be the answer. But I don't know why all falls on Loki, especially because it seems from this trailer that they picked him up right away. But maybe they didn't. Maybe he joyrided through time a little bit, figuring out how the Tesseract works, and now he has to fix all that. I don't know if I trust Owen Wilson's Mobius. His exact name is, let's see here, Mobius M Mobius, which probably stands for Mobius, Mobius, Mobius. I suspect he's up to no good, which we're going to talk about. And I think, by the way, there will be one more trailer for this show, and it will be another shock and awe trailer, just to really rev you up before the show starts. Although, we're revved. We're revved. But speaking of story, I have to say, I think the story trailer gives away a bit more story than it even intends to. I think it was actually quite revealing, and so we're going to break it down right now. I just want to let you know, though, I think that it gives away, I think, a little bit more than you might think from first glance. Also, on my breakdown of episode 3 of Falcon and Winter Soldier last week, I said that Baron Zemo was quickly becoming Captain America's Loki, which is fantastic. And maybe Zemo will have a show in the near future. I'd watch it. He's so great. Zemo in the club all the time. But I just, I think this type of character is very, very likable. I think the characters, and Falcon and Winter Soldier is a whole show that's an exploration of the gray zone. And I wonder if this one will too. Does the Time Variance Authority break a lot of rules to save the world? Interesting. I also saw one of you write a comment about this trailer that you said this one makes you really want to read Loki comics finally. And I have to say that it's true. It's true. This trailer, especially with Tom Hiddleston's amazing hair, I love how it gets in his face sometimes and he has to whip it around. It really looks fantastic. But it does live up to the best Loki comics. Now, I have to warn you, there haven't been a lot of great Loki comics. I'd say the best run is by far Kieran Gillen, who in fact wrote a lot of Kid Loki. Kid Loki, also very good. And I heard that, there's a chance that Kid Loki and Lady Loki and the different variations of Loki will show up in the show. We'll see. I have a theory about our potential villain that I want to share with you. It's not Mephisto. But I think that Kieran Gillen has written the best Loki, and I think that Jason Aaron, who has been, and also the new Thor writer. Oh my God, I feel so bad I forgot his name. He's very good. But Thor has actually been a great comic for like a couple of years now. Very strong stuff. And when Loki appears there, he's also well written. But some of the recent Loki standalone comics have been quite poor, which is why they all get canceled. So if you've read a good Loki comic, please recommend it down below for people who are like, Loki, I got to get into this guy. So I'm recommending Kieran Gillen and the Jason Aaron run in the current Thor, which is couldn't be better. And then I'd love to hear your recommendations as well. And I think there might be some problems in the TVA. I see some TVA employee on employee violence in this trailer. And then also, a lot of women are employed by the TVA as they're called hunters. You see both Wunmi Mosaka and Sasha Lane here. And they both look super cool, by the way. They both look really cool. So let's break it down. All right, here we go. So much fun. The aesthetic of this trailer is very 70s. And it's weird to me that the Time Variance Authority's decor would be stuck in time, right? As I said in my trailer reaction to this trailer, why don't you have why wouldn't you have decor from throughout time? Why wouldn't it be like a real, hodgepodge? But it's a very strong choice. I think it's fantastic. It does seem to borrow quite heavily from Umbrella Academy. If I were the Umbrella Academy people, I would be super upset with this show. Really upset. It also reminds me of Legion, and Dan Stevens does have a Tom Hiddleston type quality. He too has sometimes had to dye his hair black. Sometimes Tom Hiddleston's dye job looks horrible. I'm like, what's on your head? It looks like a giant ink spot. But the hair team here, his luscious locks look very natural. I love it. He looks, as I said, I love the hair. The hair with the skinny pants, the slim fit shirt and the skinny tie, and then the fantastic hair that he whips around. Oh my God, it's just so great. But also, I saw one of you reference Brazil, which I thought was a great reference, which is a very zany... Brazil by Terry Gilliam being an inspiration for the TVA, that's hot stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's in fact what inspired this decor. But I still prefer it being all different time periods. But as I also said in my trailer reaction, that would probably be a lot more expensive to do. All right, so makes me want orange slices when I look at this wall. So I love the way so elevators are a big thing here. Oh, they're gonna redo the other Tower of Terror ride. You know, one's Guardians of the Galaxy. I see a TVA retcon in the future, maybe for the Orlando track. They can't though, because it's still Marvel. There's a contractual problem. Well, Guardians are okay. They're going to Epcot. I guess they're outside of the purview of that deal with Universal, but they're not allowed to put anything in Florida that's like Marvel Prime. I would just write Universal whatever size check that they needed so that I could build an Avengers campus on both coasts. We'll see. If Avengers campus is super popular in California, which obviously it will be, I'm sure that they'll figure something out in Florida. So, as I said, it looks like they got him right away. This looks like Wunmi Mosaka here, although there's a couple of shots in her in this trailer. She's, of course, I think most of you would know her from Lovecraft Country. They've apprehended him. She must be pretty good. She's a Hunter B-15. She must be pretty good to have gotten Loki. So she's bringing him in solo. She's got the Tesseract. So I love that. So I think elevators, again, as I said, big theme. So she brings him into Central, which looks like the main room in Legion at the mental asylum. And also, I just watched Zootopia for Easter the other day, and this looks like, you know, when you first enter the precinct, right? So she's brought him in. She brought him into the TVA precinct. And he's like, I know you guys. This is Kang's hideout. Kang actually is referenced a lot here, in roundabout ways. But, you know, Kang, I think, will clearly spin out of the TVA. And he, of course, is going to debut. Maybe he'll show up. Well, they already filmed this, and I think they cast him afterwards. But he, of course, is set for Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp 3. All right, so the TVA, we actually can get even better shots of this building. There's also a very nice hallway with another elevator. Will this be the new load area for, I like the Twilight Zone reskinning, but Twilight Zone isn't a Disney property, so I can see why they're like trying to get it out of there. It's a great ride though. Although I gotta tell you, the Guardians of the Galaxy, what do you guys think? I think the Guardians of the Galaxy one in California is like, okay. I do like the Rocket Raccoon animatronic, but I think it moves so quickly that you don't really get to see anything. Redoing it with Loki, I would even redo the California one, quite frankly. I mean, they're getting a roller coaster, the Guardians. All right. So there's Gugu Mbatha-Raw. She plays, it's been confirmed by Disney, I believe, Judge Renslayer, who is not only from the comics, but is a Kang love interest. Oh, she and Jonathan Majors would make an adorable couple. So I think keep an eye on that, and don't be surprised if maybe you see her showing up in the Kang storyline. They don't have to necessarily go with that, but come on, why wouldn't you? And it would make sense why they would cast Gugu Mbatha-Raw in the role. So look, this is this must be like a side court. It does look a little bit like, you know, some of the smaller courts. There's Owen Wilson in the back there. I guess he's getting ready to pick him up. He's going to be his case officer. And there's Wunmi Mosaka and another shot there with, you know, the guy she brought in. I guess she has to also be able to testify. He was running around with this Judge Renslayer, this Tesseract. I'd be like, you know how long the Tesseract was bopping around in the timeline and you guys didn't collect it? I don't want to hear it. Where's his lawyer? Where's Loki's lawyer? I'll do it. All right, so I guess they don't give you legal representation in the TVA. I like all the propaganda on the walls, by the way, too. I just read an article about how China's insisting that they show propaganda movies in theaters in China. So weird that countries like that still exist today. All right, so they got a lot of hunters here because I guess they feel they got some troublemakers. Although Loki seems pretty well behaved right now, especially with that collar on his neck. So X-Men-y, by the way. They're like, we got Madripoor and we got collar inhibitors. Thank you very much. We're dipping a toe into the X-Men accoutrement. So some people said this looked a little bit like the DMV, and I think that's funny. I wonder who this is going to be. Who else is online? That's very funny. I like the bureaucracy. I'm a big fan of, I like bureaucracy from a story perspective. I think that's fun. But obviously, nobody's a huge fan of red tape. Although I think we all feel like we're Loki, and we'll just cut right through that. All right, so I love this when he's like, because, Loki's saying, the circus, and I see the clowns are doing their act. I love, this is a great interaction. Owen Wilson's brilliantly cast here. And Owen Wilson's like, it's a nice metaphor. It makes you sound smart. And Loki says, I am smart. And then this is the beauty of the script. Mobius says, oh, I know, because he's being friendly. The best way to shut something down is to agree with it, right? And also, it's very disarming. You don't continue the argument. You're like, what, are we arguing or not? And Owen Wilson's like, I'm doing a little dance over here. He's a great adversary mentally and snark-wise for Tom Hiddleston's Loki. Although, there's a great line about that coming up. All right. So they agree, and he sends him on his way with that crazy technology. He's like, what do you got? Like one of those candy apple computers, right? I wish it was that, actually, in fact. Again, it would be like different things throughout time. So there's an adorable cat on the floor, although now whenever we see a cat in a Marvel movie, especially get his own little shot like that, you're like, are you a flirkin? Right? AKA Goose from Captain Marvel. And this guy really likes flirkin. Because, you see him there, and he's got a flirkin on his cat, or a cat, just maybe it's just a regular cat. He's got a mug like that. That's hilarious. So this is a great gag. He said, do you sign everything that you ever said? And I'm like, I would have thought with Loki it would have been more than that, unless it's like single spaced. I still think he would have said more. And again, where is his representation to look over this thing and make sure it's correct? Although it gets proven in just a moment, although maybe this is just a neat trick to get him to sign it. But he says, this is absurd. And he gets an update. I like that the paper comes from the ceiling, by the way. Good job, production design. That's very fun. And so you got to sign this too. And I like the punctuation on this. I'm like, who's doing this? Is there no grammar in the TVA? And then, because this, maybe it's all lowercase, but then absurd is only capitalized the first letter. Fascinating. All right. Very weird for bureaucracy. I like all the, the Asgardian, like runes. We had a lot of runes in WandaVision, interestingly enough. She and Loki, kind of like, Wanda has the same kind of, magic a little bit that Loki uses. Loki and Doctor Strange have not totally overlapped like they should have. They had that thing where Loki was falling for a long time, that gag. But, interestingly, they haven't done more with it. So this is, I think, simpler times in the TVA. I think they're having an issue. So here's the control room, it looks like. And there's Mobius there in the back, overseeing. Now look at this. In this shot, the timeline's just fine. So I think we're going to see it start to fall apart. So the timeline's fine in a much more low-tech way than Tilda Swinton explained it, right, to Banner. So I like that. They're like, hey, we are owned by Disney now. Let's go to the vault and get some Disney animation to work with here. So they do have a mix of technology. Now here, he's showing him when he took the Tesseract. Now here's a question I have for you. Now, Loki, in this show, jumps out of the timeline right after the first Avengers movie. Now that means not only does he not go through his redemption arc that he does in the films, but he doesn't sacrifice himself in Infinity War, which means no redemption, but also that there's a death in his future. And I would expect, especially since Mobius says that he's studied Loki's entire life, all of it, because he has access to the entire timeline, I suspect that Mobius knows that Loki died. Now the question is, when will he tell him? Will he use that to motivate Loki to work with him? Or is that something that's going to get sprung on Loki later on in the series? I'm very, very curious to how that will be used, because it'll be very good for the character. This is also a great way to get around his death, just like they did with Gamora. You take a version of the character from earlier in the timeline, bring him up to the forefront, and you still, they didn't cheat, the death still counted, but the character doesn't have to go away. All right, so love it. So there, you see the timeline starting to separate. That's crazy. And they're like, what's happening? Now look, there is another shot of the TVA building. Look how far it goes. It looks like a great shopping mall. You ever been to the Edmonton Mall? It reminds me of the Edmonton Mall. That's a great place. I love that place. I went there when I was little. They had a comic book store where paper digests were lined up like a bookstore. I'll never forget it. So look, these weapons, it's interesting to me they're using non-lethals. I guess the TVA doesn't want to mess things up, but I think someone will remember being shocked. This is a little bit like what they have with Men in Black, right? So they're getting ready to deploy, and Loki's like, do I get a weapon? And I like that Owen Wilson's excellent at diffusing here. He's like, I don't think so, but not in a way that's going to make you too upset. So they go through, and look, this looks like ye old times. I'm very curious. Was Agatha around there when she was a witch? I'm curious. And then, of course, as everybody spotted, Loki's jacket says variant. I guess because, he's not the original timeline. He's gone off. So I wonder if that's what that's referring to. I love it. on June 11th. Oh boy! So Roxanne, I'm so excited for the Roxanne storyline. And I love this. I love that now we see this shot a little bit longer. And after we see the hunters come out, I love that you see the person in the trench coat come out behind, which is Mobius. I love that. It's very Columbo. He has a little bit of a Columbo trench coat. That's so cool. All right. So here, I also love this shot. There's actually 2 knives here, but there's just this focus on this one. It's a real beauty. Nice stuff, Loki. Nice weapon. But it's an elegant weapon, you know, a little bit like Loki's tongue. He'll stab you verbally, he'll stab you physically. And you can not only stab someone in the back, you can slip it in between their ribs. I mean, it's just a perfect weapon for Loki. And a really great, speaking of metaphors, for what he does in so many different ways. So I love it. I think it's blades and cuts. It's just, it's so great. It's just so on brand. So there he is. Is he helping someone? Is he hurting someone? Loki, you know, again, he's not reformed. He's a villain. He's a sometimes villain, just like Zemo. And so you never know which way he's going to go. He's like Joker too. You know, he can commiserate with the hero. He can commiserate with the villain. He's a real wild card, which is why it's so interesting and fun to watch. So who is our shadowy cloaked figure? I believe this is Sophie DiMartino. We see her a couple of shots here. She looks great. She's looking a little Kylo Ren, in fact, with that getup. Who's also Disney. I guess he could hop over if he wanted to. But I think it's Sophie DiMartino. The 2 choices for who she is are Enchantress would be the more low-key one. Often works with Loki in the comics. Another sorceress in Asgard. Or it could be Lady Loki. That could be the big reveal, that the whole time Loki's been fighting himself. You know, another version. Maybe when he died in Infinity War, he came back and he was reborn as a Lady Loki, which I believe is actually what happened in the comics now that I think about it. And Lady Loki is supposed to look like Sif, but they could go any way they wanted with it. Because I think, you know, Kevin Feige obviously is very loath to bring back, see, she hasn't worked in so long I forgot her name. I think she might be showing up briefly in Thor Ragnarok, I heard. That was like a headline, but interesting. All right, so anyway, I think I like the Lady Loki idea, quite frankly. But I think we'd all should be just as happy with Enchantress. I mean, there's shots of her on set wearing Loki's outfit, basically, which is why I think it gives credence to the Lady Loki theory. Is that our new Mobius? Where's Lady Loki? All right, so here, as you can see, there's again, destroyed Avengers Tower. Now, it's important to notice that Loki is on his own. This trailer actually explains why momentarily. So he's going along, and there's Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Judge Renslayer in her office. Looks great. I love she's got those figures in there as well. She looks real sharp. She's got her hands in her pockets. She means business. She's like, you trust this Loki? Or you have faith in him? And I like that Mobius says he has enough faith in himself for both of us. That's fantastic. So she's got one of those weapons. And we don't know. This could be cleverly cut, this trailer. You don't know if Loki's fighting her, or maybe he's getting ready to take on that shadowy figure in the elevator at the end of the hall, another hallway that we've just seen. So here he's fighting some more people. Now he's going to get another weapon in his arsenal. So he says, waves bye-bye to that person. Out the window. I wonder where they are. Now this is, again, I wonder if they're mining Roxanne. I mean, I wonder if Roxanne's mining one of the 9 realms, you know, for Asgard. That's what I think maybe this is. So here's our shadowy figure again, also using the TVA's own transport system. And she seems to have a TVA hunter with her. I think that's so. I think, you know, maybe it's someone else, but I think it's Sophia DiMartino. So maybe that's how she's able to activate it. Very interesting. And then on the other side, is he on the other side of that door, or again, is it just very clever trailer editing? But he seems to. Maybe he doesn't make it to that thing in the other trailer that he's running towards. Maybe this is his only way out. I love the shirt sleeves, Loki. All right, here's another shot of the TVA. You can see it's got a sunroof. I love it. Even bigger, maybe, or is this maybe perhaps another place? And this is a great give and take. And Loki says, I think it's adorable. It is adorable. You think you could possibly manipulate me. And he's straightening Mobius's tie while he does it. It's so condescending and fantastic. But yet, as the guys of we're just getting along here, I mean, it's really great. As I said, they seem to be quite equally matched, at least in the wits and charm department. It's just great. It's just so funny. And he says, I'm 10 steps ahead of you. And now here he is in the Roxanne store. And so I love the way he looks there. He looks so cool. Love the pop collar, Loki. Love it. And I think he sees an opportunity. You can see there's a door behind him. And I think he turns and he goes through it. And he escapes and he's on his own. He goes rogue. Of course he does. He's Loki. That's just really great. Now here seems to be maybe one of the 9 realms being mined. Now, that seems to be Loki, of course, when he sometimes rules Asgard, although it seems like a different variation of the throne room. So I'm curious to see where this might be. It doesn't look exactly like any of the throne rooms we've seen, but maybe in a different timeline, Loki totally does a redecoration of the facility. I wouldn't be surprised, but it looks great. He's got Wonder Woman's armor on over there. Now look where this is. This seems to have like I don't know if that's in the material or if that's cracks in the timeline or the facade, but it's really beautiful. And look, Loki's picked up, speaking of weapons, yet another one. Now he has a much larger blade. So, oh look, I like that. I wonder if the room is moving or that's just the camera work. I think that seems like maybe Asgard. So we've got, there we go. There's another, that's Sasha Lane is another hunter. And they seem to be in medieval times because she seems to have picked up, I don't know if they're in like medieval times, the restaurant where, Matthew Broderick so famously went in Cable Guy. But I think because they're TVA, she might be in actual medieval times because she has a knight's joust there, which I think is really cool. So see, she's fighting another hunter. I wonder what's going on there. So then we have that great shot from the comics, when he's running for president. And there's Wunmi Mosaka again. A lot of cool different rooms in the TVA. Now look at this. Where did that green blast come from? Loki doesn't use those very often. I wonder how it happens. You would think he'd be using those all the time. I really like it though. So look at this. So there's our shadowy figure again. Again, I think it's Sophia DiMartino. But considering the writing on the wall there, this seems to be like red light district in Asgard, interestingly enough. It looks totally like Total Recall, but I'm very curious to see what's going on here. And then they're in the commissary. So I always say I love to visit the commissary and the cafeteria and the gift shop. My favorite places to go. One down, let's see what they got at the TVA before I leave. I like they're having lunch together, and he's like, I can't trust you. I've studied your whole life. You've literally stabbed people like in the back 50 times. And I love Loki's response. He's like, I'm never going to do it again. And you're like, but you have to, I guess, Mobius couldn't see the future of this variant because he's technically out of the timeline now working with the TVA, which makes Owen Wilson a little bit more vulnerable, interestingly enough. And so then you have this great shot. So he says that. His great shot where he gets his jacket for the first time and pops the collar. How do I look? You look fabulous, baby. Now here he's fighting some people. I'm curious to where this is. I wonder where those figures are. They look like Michael Jackson extras. But he's fighting them with the sword. His hair looks great there in that shot. Green Loki energy, it seems like. Now he's in a purple space, the tie flapping in the wind. Then here he is with our villain. Now, that's supposed to obviously look like Black Widow, but remember when she died, she didn't have her short bob, and that looks very much like Sophia DiMartino's hair, again, as we've seen on set photos. So, as I said, Loki's allegiances could go in any direction, so he might commiserate with her. Maybe he's saying we're both maybe they are sitting exactly across from each other. They do have similar hairstyles. Again, I think they might be the same person. We'll see. And so there's Gugu Mbatha-Raw again with that non-lethal. You needed a better weapon, lady. And then we see a figure flipping here. In that same space, you can see the marks on the wall. I think that's Sophia DiMartino. I'm not sure. But a long knife like Loki's carrying in some of the other shots. And then this, some of you thought he was taking a photo at Pompeii. I don't know if he was or not. It kind of looks like that. I think that would be an extremely poor taste for the show to do. I don't know if they should make that joke, but let's see I'll be curious to see what's going on here. It could be, they could visit different times in Marvel history just like Endgame did, which, could get old real fast and could be expensive, but I wouldn't complain if they did it a couple of times. And then we have that great title treatment with all the different letters changing in and out, and then that great Disney Plus logo. It looks so good. So what do you think? What do you think of the story reveals here? Share your own theories down below. Do you think it's Enchantress or Lady Loki or someone entirely different? Again, share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.